The knocking sound had been coming and going in my engine, and I had a feeling that my Nissan Stanza was actually just about to die. In the back of my mind was a tiny voice screaming that it was over 60 miles to the next town and I would never make it. My fiancée, Nicole, had always been on my case about how I never checked or changed the oil. Easy for her to remember. Her dad was a mechanic and made her do all that stuff on her own. My folks had always checked it for me. Nicole stopped checking in on the car for me as soon as we moved in together, and she said she wanted to teach me to have some responsibility. I guess I was going to be getting my first lesson. I looked at my cell phone. No service. It had been that way for about the last half an hour. So much for my service provider's promise of a nationwide network. I made a deal with the car. If you get me to Gloucester, I promise I'll check your oil every week, fill up your tank with the expensive stuff. The Stanza seemed to be in cahoots with Nicole, though, because the engine sputtered and I found myself slowing down. Thanks a lot, you piece of shit. I parked on the side of the road and looked around. I was pretty much surrounded by woods, but I knew that I was close to the coast, and there was bound to be a house or two by the beach. Sure, it was well into autumn, but maybe a few summer residents would still be hanging around, or better yet, an all-year dweller. I'm one of the handful of location scouts, hired to find the perfect place to shoot of all sorts of films. We often do the legal work as well, negotiating to get permissions for the film for certain lengths of time. The assignment for me had been to find a forest with lots of gnarled-looking pine trees, but plenty of natural light. This had quite naturally led me up to New England and my current predicament. I grabbed the backpack that I had packed for my trip out of the trunk and then dumped all my dirty clothes into the back seat. I replaced them with a map of the area, my water bottle, and 4 granola bars that were supposed to keep me from eating my own hand before I got to the motel. As an afterthought, I changed from my ratty driving shoes to my good sneakers. If I had a hike in front of me, I wanted to be comfortable. I was in pretty good shape before I went to college, and I had kind of since let myself go a little bit, but I was still fit enough for a jog every now and then. I wasn't worried about how long I would have to walk. My chief concern was the reaming I would get from the studio if I was running late. There had been brackish smell in the air as soon as I stepped out of the car, and I could hear the faint sound of gulls, so I knew the general direction I should go if I wanted to reach the sea. With every step, I thought I could hear Nicole's voice echoing her favorite insults over and over again. Jake, you effed up. Jake, you effed up. Jake, you effed up. Not the most pleasant beat for walking. The trees eventually gave way to hills and a few small beaches. To my relief, there was also a scenic-looking little ocean village. I didn't remember it to be on the map. Houses speckled the area behind the beach, and I could see a school and some businesses near the waterfront. I felt that there was something weird about this place, though, and I quickly realized it was a lack of human noise which disturbed me. I noted that there were really no cars driving on the road that led to the village, nor were there people hanging around outside or in their yards. Still, it was Saturday afternoon. Maybe they were all just eating lunch. I decided to investigate and headed up the beach. I noticed a small child on the beach right away, the only apparent sign of human life. His back was to me and was slightly hunched over. His hair seemed to be growing from a summer buzz cut, and he couldn't really have been more than about maybe 5 years of age. Worried that he might be hurt, I ran over to him. "Hey kid, you alright?" The child turned to me and smiled. Caught in his teeth were small red globs of slender white bones. A scale glittered from his lower lip. I looked down and saw that he was holding half an eaten fish. From the smell, I suspected it had been dead for at least a few hours. A couple of insects were crawling over the flesh. "Do you want some?" The boy lifted the fish towards me. An assortment of guts slid out of it and fell onto my sneaker. It jerked back reflexively, and the boy looked offended. "I'm sorry, I don't eat raw fish, and neither should you," I said firmly. "Where the hell are his parents?" "He was a present left by the sea monsters," the little boy said. "What?" "The sea monsters left him behind. They found better food here. The white clouds come in and go away, but they stay longer and longer to hunt." "It sounds like you're making up a story so that you don't get in trouble. Where are your mom and dad?" I was getting impatient. The boy pointed to the waves as they were crashing on the beach. "They went in there," he said. Okay. I didn't really know how to respond. The kid was obviously having fun with me. How about you show me where you live? I'd like to ask your parents if I can use their phone. Phones don't work anymore, boy said. Then he froze, his eyes wide. I turned and tried to figure out what he was staring at, but all I saw was just a thick mist rolling slowly in from the ocean. What's the matter? I asked. The boy started to shake. He dropped his fish, and I barely caught what he said next. They're coming. Before I knew what was happening, the boy had started running towards the village. I considered pursuing him, but he looked pretty freaked out. Somehow, I don't think his parents would be very excited about their kid talking to a strange man on the beach anyways. I continued on to the houses. There were some fishing boats by the docks, and I immediately noticed a man standing in one of them. His back was to me, and he appeared to be leaning against the mast. I laughed, relieved that I would finally be able to use someone's phone. I made my way down to the dock toward the fishing vessel. I stopped short as soon as I came abreast of the boat. My eyes teared up and I started retching. The man was not leaning against the mast, but was bound to it with heavy rope. His mouth hung open in a silent scream and his eyes were completely gone. I guess the birds had done the work on him because there were strips of flesh missing from his face and neck. Overall, there was a faint buzzing sound as flies swarmed around his body. One of his legs were completely missing, and the other had been taken off unevenly below the knee. His arms were still attached, but they were also discolored and covered in wounds. It almost looked as though they had been chewed on and sawed at simultaneously. There was another body lying face down in the boat. It was clad in a police officer's uniform and seemed to be equally unpleasant in shape. I didn't want to look at it, considering what the other man had looked like, but the officer's hand was close to me and I saw it was swarming with maggots. I felt my stomach twist and lurch as I struggled again to keep my breakfast from escaping. There is something very wrong with this village. I turned away and ran as fast as I could back to the houses. I picked one at random, no longer worried about disturbing the people inside. It was clear to me that there were probably no living people here anyways, except for that strange little boy. I would have to go look for him, but first I needed a phone. I had to call Nicole. Or the police. Both. I needed to call both. The front door of the house was locked, and the windows all looked like they had wood nailed over the inside, but the back porch had a sliding glass door that wasn't boarded up, although the curtains were drawn. It was easy enough to break into by lifting it off the track. I did nearly break my nose by walking through the curtains and into what I thought was a wall. A tentative push told me that it was just furniture, and I discovered a large walnut bureau had been moved in front of the doors. The home was furnished in a country theme. Lots of ceramic roosters and chickens, as well as buttercups embroidered on the brown throw pillows. There were some photos of a couple, who I assumed were the owners. They were younger than I would have thought, given the decor. The man had a dark complexion and wore a plaid shirt in pretty much every photo. The woman had wavy brown hair and a big smile, which kind of reminded me of Nicole. You know, normal-looking people. What happened to them? What happened to this town? The phone in the kitchen was a cordless one. It had been left off the hook and the battery was dead. I didn't see any others, so reluctantly I left my backpack behind and decided to venture upstairs. It seemed more of a violation than the downstairs break-in, and I found myself tiptoeing. There were more photos upstairs, the same couple, sometimes with other people. No children, though. They must not have wanted any, or maybe they couldn't have any. There were 4 doors upstairs, 3 open and 1 closed. I noticed a sickly sweet smell right away. Something a little more foul or rotten underneath. I wonder if there had been food left up there. I decided not to look for the source of that odor, though. The first door led into the bathroom. The second seemed to be a craft room of some kind, but the third open door was a bedroom, done up nicely with soft blue walls and a plaid comforter. There was a journal lying on the bed, and more importantly, a phone was sitting on the nightstand. I picked it up, but the line was silent. No dial tone at all. The kid on the beach hadn't been jerking me around. Not only was I in a ghost town, but it was one without phones or electricity. I looked over at the journal on the bed. It had been left open like that. But was it on purpose? What a strange thing to do. I felt a bead of perspiration slip down my forehead, even though it was getting kind of chilly in this house. Wiping my sweaty palms with my jeans, I reached into the journal. September 15th. It's only been a day. Hard to believe. I'm keeping this record for anyone who comes along after well, just in case. I don't know where to begin. I guess with the fog. It rolled in and the power immediately went out. Our cars wouldn't start, the phone lines were down, and then people began dying. We didn't see it happen, we just heard the screaming, but a bunch of us ran into the school to hide. We were there for hours. They tied Nelson to the mast of his boat to try to lure us out. We could hear him screaming all afternoon as he baked in the sun. It was pretty warm out, but he must have been dying of thirst. In the end, the screams turned to sobs and pleading that plain out tore at my soul. The crying was mostly incoherent, but we clearly heard him say, "Please, they took my feet. Jesus, they're chewing on my legs." I couldn't bear to listen to him anymore. I covered my ears for a bit. Finally, Officer Dean and a few other lobstermen decided to go out and try to rescue him. I'll forever bear it on my conscience that I didn't go with them. We heard their screams too, but they didn't last long. Nelson stopped wailing the next day. Something finally killed him. I guess I'll never know what. I made a break for it during my rescue mission. My house was only 2 streets down from the school, and I had to see if Marcy had made it home. She cried when she saw me come in through the door. Marcy took inventory of what we had left of canned food, enough to get us through a month if we're careful. I hope our neighbors are stocked up too, but I haven't seen them since the mist came in. Hope Louis and Pam are good. Baked beans for dinner tonight. September 16th. I'm hiding my worries from Marcy. I don't want to scare her. The phones are still down and I can't call anyone. Still can't start the cars either. Louis tried to leave with his family on foot, but they were killed too. I didn't see it. You can't see anything, but I heard Pam screaming his name and the kids too. But I try not to think about that. I'm glad now that Marcy and I do not have any kids. The only way to stay alive is to board up your house and pray they don't find you. Actually, I'm not sure praying does any good. God seems to have abandoned us. September 17th. Someone's walking around hollering that their car is stalled. I think anyone who comes here is affected by the strange phenomenon that seems to be affecting us. They were right outside our house. I almost opened the door because I wanted to help him, but I peeked through the boards of the window first. Then I saw it. One of those creatures. It passed right by the window. I pissed myself, I was so scared. It got the guy. I saw the whole thing. I don't want to describe it, but I'm not writing about it. I can't think now. I might be crazy. September 19th. Whatever they are, we know they came from deep under the cover of the fog. We can't see them, but we can hear their squelching noises through the mist, and it shows no signs of lifting. At first, the creatures wandered around for only about an hour or two at a time, but it was still hard to predict their movements. Better stay indoors. Now they come out for longer periods of time. It's like they're testing themselves. Marcy hasn't talked much since Luce and Pam were taken. I try to get her to eat, but her appetite is down along with her spirit. I'm sure we're all going to be dead soon. For all I know, me and Marcy are the only ones left. I've been thinking the best way to go would just be to end myself. But I don't have a gun. Marcy and I could take some pills, go together, nice and peaceful. But I won't think about that now. It's really just a last resort. September 20th. If you're reading this, then we're all dead. I hope what came to our town isn't able to spread any further, but I don't know what those water demons are capable of. They're slithering around the streets constantly now. Get out if you can. It's too late for us.
There were no other entries after that, and now I know it had been roughly 2 weeks since whatever had happened in the village. I swallow hard and remember the bad smell and the door at the end of the hallway. The one that was closed. I suddenly didn't want to be in this house anymore. I couldn't quite believe everything that this guy who kept this journal had written, and I deeply wanted to pass it off as he was just some eccentric or a guy who had gone crazy after seeing people murdered. But the little boy on the beach was talking about these things in the water too. I shuddered. I went back downstairs and grabbed my backpack and went back through the curtains of the sliding door. My skin prickled when I saw the world had gone white, with thick swirling mist. Couldn't see more than a foot or two in front of me. How had it come in so quickly? I figured that I'd only been in the house for maybe a quarter of an hour at most. Did fog always move like that? Suddenly I heard a sound. It reminded me of the time that I'd gone out to play by a brook in my new boots. The ground was soft and flooded with rain, and I had gotten stuck in the mud up to my knee. The earth made a wet sucking sound as I pulled my foot out, and my left boot had almost been lost forever in the muck. There were dark shapes moving in the mist, one of them quite close. It was huge. It backed up and slowly towards the house, but I realized it would just be a death trap if I barricaded myself in there. I had to try to make it out of the mist. One of the figures paused. I could almost feel it looking at me. Then it made a low gurgling sound. Then, impossibly fast, it was coming for me. I saw that although the creatures had two man-like arms, it certainly didn't have any legs. It was long, dark, and serpent-like with slitted yellow eyes and shiny wet skin. Its mouth opened and emitted a high-pitched shriek, revealing a mouth full of teeth and ragged edges that reminded me of bread knives. I remember the corpse in the boat, the ragged bottom half. I turned and booked it back towards the hills. I didn't scream. I couldn't scream. I just ran. The mist got thinner as I gained higher ground and still didn't stop. I wasn't aiming for my car. That was a lost cause. Instead, I ran down the main road, knowing that I would sprint the full 60-odd miles if I had to. Adrenaline does that to you. I even lost my backpack, and I don't even remember dropping it. At some point, I realized that I had left the fog and town far behind me. I hoped that the creatures weren't able to survive this far from the sea. I even entertained the thought that maybe they hadn't been able to chase me because of their dependence on their watery habitat. But I wasn't certain of anything anymore. A world where those things existed was a world that no longer made sense. My legs wobbled dangerously as I slowed down, but I continued to walk, eager to put as much distance as possible between myself and that village. My breathing was ragged, and I hadn't had this much exercise in a long time, and my lungs felt like limp balloons that didn't want to inflate. I stopped for a rest and checked my phone. Still no signal. And the battery was at 4%. Thought of the boy at the beach again, and the guilt which assaulted me almost made me turn back. Almost. I know Nicole would have. She was always the brave one, always thinking of others and telling me that I need to get my shit together. Well, I would keep walking until I got to the next town. I'd contact the police, and they could save the boy from the beach. Wasn't that what we paid the police for? To be the heroes that we didn't want to be? Maybe the boy was already dead. I only meant to stop for a few moments to catch my breath, but I drifted off. I have no idea how long I was out. A familiar squelching sound jerked me awake, and I realized with horror that I was surrounded once again by white fog. My chest tightened because 6 of these creatures were crowded around me, studying me with cold eyes. The biggest one tilted its head and emitted a low hiss. I had been followed after all. I closed my eyes again and I thought of Nicole. Her voice echoed in my head as I felt the slimy fingers around my throat. Even as the serrated teeth began tearing at my gut and screams burst from me along with my insides, I thought I could hear her speaking to me. That old, painfully familiar sound. Jake, you effed up. All right, well, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. This is a pretty good one. I actually did like it. I didn't expect that ending. So the moral of that story is always keep running. When you outrun something, just keep running. Don't stop. You trust me. Your lungs will give you enough O2. You'll be fine. I do appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed, like I said, leave a like. And if you are new, subbing is a good way to stay up to date on when I post these things. We're approaching 13,000 subs. Channel's really taking off. I really do appreciate the support, guys. Okay, well, I will see everyone in the next one. Thanks for watching.